that justice is not a destination, it is a discipline. Let me start by saying that this evening is deeply personal. It is personal not because it marks a milestone in an individual's life, but because it reflects a collective reckoning of truth, struggle, and the unfinished promise of justice in our nation's history. I am humbled beyond words to find myself before you as the 25th Chief Justice of Bangladesh, honored as I am also by my alma mater, an institution whose legacy is rooted in moral inquiry, legal philosophy, and the fearless defense of liberty. But ladies and gentlemen, this evening is not about me. It is about us. It is about how we arrived here. It is about why this honor belongs not merely to an individual, but to a nation that chose justice over tyranny, truth over deceit, and reform over silence. We must speak of July and August 2024, the months that shook our nation's collective conscience, when lawlessness spread like wildfire, when state institutions were captured, including the judiciary, and repurposed to serve a narrow few, when the cries of the oppressed echoed louder than court judgments, and when people finally took to the streets. In every square of Dhaka, in every nook and cranny of Ramna, in the heart of Shahbag and Shahid Minar, young voices rose with a single firm cry: we want justice. It was not a slogan. It was a verdict pronounced not in courtrooms, but in the public square. It was this uprising of moral clarity that led to the fall of a regime that had weaponized the law and compromised the very soul of justice. For the first time in our history, the judiciary was not spared scrutiny. The very foundations of judicial legitimacy were questioned by the people we are meant to serve. It was from that fire that my appointment emerged. I am a revolution's child. And this happened not as a ceremonial elevation, but as a solemn mandate granted. I was not chosen by accident, nor appointed for prestige. I was summoned by the moral energy of a people who demanded that the judiciary be rebuilt with courage, truth, and accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 21st of September 2024, I declared my reform roadmap for the judiciary, a blueprint born not in the silence of chambers, but in the thunder of civic resistance. This roadmap rests on 3 pillars: judicial independence, administrative autonomy, and procedural efficiency. We have happily since taken bold steps. 2 bodies, the Judicial Appointment Council and the Supreme Judicial Council, have been operationalized with full authority to appoint and remove judges of the Supreme Court, respectively, insulated from executive interference. Furthermore, a draft law for the creation of a Supreme Court Secretariat, complete with an organogram and concept note, has long been submitted to the government by the Secretariat or the Supreme Court Registry. But ladies and gentlemen, institutional architecture is but only one part of reform. The deeper work, I would submit, humbly so, is cultural, human, and profoundly moral. We must, in that context, confront a tragic truth. The common man still does not experience justice as something near, swift, or honest. The common perception still is of delay, corruption, and to address this, to change this, I issued a 12-point directive against corruption, establishing 2 grievance redress helplines at the Supreme Court. I'm still pushing for digital case tracking and introducing transparency protocols that are now being happily, 10 months on nearly, being replicated vigorously and with unprecedented enthusiasm and commitment at the district level all over the country. I have personally visited every division of Bangladesh, from Chattogram to Rajshahi, from Sylhet and Molvi Bazar to Rangpur, from Mymensingh to Khulna, to carry and deliver the message of reform. I have met with countless judges, my constituents, judges, magistrates and lawyers, members of the local administration, the law enforcement. And I called in particular on the district judiciary and local bar associations to rise to the challenge, not as passive enforcers of tradition, but as architects and proud architects of a new people-centric justice delivery system. And they have responded emphatically, ladies and gentlemen. The Bangladesh Judicial Service Association has already begun consultations at various levels. Local bar associations have initiated seminars. I am confident that it is in that spirit that this very association, the Supreme Court Bar Association, shall invariably assume its role, not only as guardian of the bar, but as a significant stakeholder, an equal stakeholder in this national reform project. The bench, distinguished members of the bar, cannot reform alone. The bar must lead beside us. শুধুই আমরা এখন আমাদের প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক ইতিহাসের এক নব অধ্যায়ের দ্বার প্রান্তে। আমি গত 6 মাস ধরে বাংলাদেশের সর্বত্র যে সংস্কারের বার্তা নিয়ে বেরিয়েছি, আমি সেই বার্তা আপনাদের কাছে আজকে উপস্থাপন করছি। সংস্কারের যে প্রক্রিয়া আমাদের নিজেদের উদ্যোগে গত সেপ্টেম্বর হতে শুরু হয়েছিল, তারই ধারাবাহিকতায় আমি আপনাদেরকে এই প্রক্রিয়ার আপনাদের অংশীদারিত্বের কথা স্মরণ করিয়ে দিতে চাইছি। দেশের 8টি বিভাগে আমি সকলকে এই সংস্কারের প্রক্রিয়ায় দায়িত্ব নেওয়ার কথা বলেছি। আজকে তারই আমি যে কথাটা বলেছি আজকে তারই পুনরাবৃত্তি করছি আপনাদের সামনে। In other words, I am asking you to take charge. I am asking you to claim ownership of this reform agenda. শুধু আসন্ন মাসগুলোতে এই সংস্কারের গতিশীলতা বজায় রাখার জন্যই নয় আমার এই আহ্বান আপনাদের কাছে, বরং সামনের বছরগুলোতে তার স্থায়িত্ব বজায় রাখবার জন্য আপনাদের কাছে আমার আহ্বান রইল। Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to share a development of national significance. On the 22nd of June 2025, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh shall, inshallah, host a plenary session on judicial reform to be graced by the presence of the Honorable Chief Advisor of the interim government. This will not be a mere event. It shall be a national milestone, a time for us to collectively renew our vows to constitutional justice, independence, and service to the people. None of these reforms could have gained, or the demand for these reforms could have gained traction without the support of our trusted partners. The UNDP, with strong commitment, has stood by us since December last year. Our international partners, preeminently the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Sweden, among others, have lent considerable support, not the least of which has been their participation at the very highest level at our judicial roadshows, reform roadshows in Mymensingh, Khulna, Chattogram, Rangpur, and Rajshahi. It is in this context that the conferral of the Honorary Fellowship for Life by Wharton College, University of Oxford, gains a special meaning. It serves as a call to remain vigilant, bold, but humane. It is a reckoning with reality. It is a recognition of Bangladesh's new judicial awakening. Wharton College, with its legacy of progressive thought and principled dissent, has long been associated with those who dare to speak against orthodoxy in the name of equity. Unsurprisingly, therefore, there hangs prominently, if you ever visit Wharton College and you go to the senior common room, you will see a portrait of a gentleman called, a 17th century figure, called John Cook. He was a Wharton alumnus who happened to be the first Solicitor General of the English Commonwealth. And the reason why that portrait hangs there is because he initiated the prosecution of King Charles I. John Cook had built a reputation as a highly original and progressive lawyer, if not an outright radical one, and played a pivotal role in bringing charges of high treason against King Charles I, which eventually led to the king's execution. At that time, ladies and gentlemen, we must appreciate the trying of a reigning king had no precedent. Previous monarchs had been deposed, but none had ever been brought to trial. Of course, and as history tells us, upon the restoration of King Charles II, John Cook met his sad fate, and he was eventually convicted of regicide and was executed in 1660. But that, ladies and gentlemen, has not stopped Wharton College from still celebrating and marveling at the awesome legacy of a man called John Cook. Distinguished guests, I began this brief journey 10 months ago, and I have about exactly to the day 7 months in office. I began this journey with the belief that justice is not a destination, it is a discipline. A discipline to which we must renew our commitment each day with conscience, with sacrifice, and with a huge dose of humility. It is also a truism that the revolution, yes, I call it a revolution, the revolution that restored dignity to this office is not over. It was a catalyst at renewal and renewed vigor. The future of our judiciary, and indeed our country from here onwards, will be defined not by words declared from this podium, but by how faithfully we serve the people who gave us this rare opportunity. Not only at introspection, at reform, and an opportunity at rebuilding. But to consider in the months and the years ahead, possibly decades from now, all aspects of transitional justice, and indeed restorative justice, ladies and gentlemen, in the long run. With that, I thank the Supreme Court Bar Association for this gracious gesture. I thank my fellow judges, colleagues, and respected guests. And I thank my alma mater, Wharton College, University of Oxford, for reminding us that the world is watching. And sometimes, but just sometimes, it applauds as well. Thank you very much.